So you need a shed and you think you can save money by building one yourself? Well, you've come to the right place. So this is the shed we're building. I call it a loft shed, and you'll see in a moment why. But it features a front door with 2 windows and a roll-up door on the left-hand side. That's going to be used like a garage door for bringing in the tractor. And it's going to be 2x6 framing on the floor. That's going to go pressure treated right against the ground, and shingles on the roof. And so it's going to be a really fun project. And if I strip away the exterior, you'll be able to see why I call it a loft shed, because it features these 2 huge lofts on both sides. And they are plenty high enough, at least for everybody in my family. So it's going to provide them with a lot of great storage and maximize the space so that they can get use of their garages going forward. We're building the shed directly on the gravel base with no space for animals to nest underneath it. After rough leveling, we started by cutting the 2 long rim joists first. All right, that's the center. I like to find the center and mark the locations of the joist from the center towards the ends. The only disadvantage of building directly on the ground is airflow. Although the framing is pressure treated, and it can come in contact with the ground, we use non-pressure treated exterior grade plywood because it's safer for kids. So we decided it would be best to vent excess moisture that could cause mold or rot the floor. I got these stainless steel vents on Amazon, and they have little barbs to hold them in place. I also bought a 2-pack of 53mm hole saws to drill the holes. We installed a vent at both ends of each joist cavity, so they'll have plenty of fresh airflow under the floor. The joists are spaced 16 inches on center, except for the outer 2, which will be flush with the ends. Yeah, I know the stones aren't perfectly level at this point. We'll tweak them later before putting on the plywood. I nailed each joist with 3 long nails in through the rim joist. I really recommend a framing nailer for this project, especially because I suck at nailing. It'll be completely supported by the stone, so there's no need for joist hangers here. We didn't attach the shed to the ground. This may not work in Tornado Alley. All right, 238. But the thousands of pounds of materials and contents will definitely stay put in New Jersey. We're not worried. Oh man, 237 3/4. Good enough for government work. With the base square and reasonably level, we installed 3/4 thick sheets of plywood, starting from the center and working outwards, staggering the joints. No, you're going this corner. You want to lay them long ways. Is that it? Yep. Okay, nice and tight. The base is a little less than 16 feet long, so we trimmed all the sheets to fit. We used that same framing nailer, this time with 2-inch ring-shanked coated galvanized nails to nail down the plywood. Alright, now that the floor is done, we are going to assemble the walls, and we are starting with the back wall because that one has no cuts in it and it's nice and big. It's a good idea to always crown your boards up, and what that means is you're looking for the natural curve of the wood and just make that to the top so they're all consistent. Alright, we're building the walls right here on the deck, and we're using T111 siding because it is not only plywood, which is sturdy, but it also takes a nice paint job and you don't have to do anything else. And the way this works is they just overlap a little bit. They don't butt right up against each other. So you can see the grooves here. When you put them together, I'll show you over here, you can see it just leaves a groove and you can't really tell where the seams are. And they're 48 inches wide and my studs are 24, so I have a stud every seam as well as right in the middle. You can see the nails there. And we left it long on the bottom and we're going to snap a line and cut that to the length that we need it to be, so they're all the same exact length. So what we did is we left a 2-inch overhang on the bottom plate, and that way it hangs over just our plywood and about 1.25 inches onto the that 2x6 there, so it doesn't block those vents. But that way any water that hits it will come down, won't go underneath. You always want it to overlap. Next up will be the front wall. That one has a window and a door in it. So that's the first thing I did, was mark those. And what we did first is we crowned them so that both of them are curved up, if there is a curve to it. And then we marked from the center. I found the very center of the boards, because the way I designed it, the design always starts from the middle. You find the center, and then I went 24 inches out, and I made marks evenly so that we'll know where to nail the studs. All right, we got a door. All right, that's the pattern. Take out our siding nails, and we'll put in the longer ones. Fastest way to build a wall.
Do it away.
Grab. You good?
Good.
All right, that way, even if the boards aren't perfectly straight, you get a nice straight cut when we're done. To build the header, we put 2x6s cut the right width, and then we're just using scraps of T111 in between them to create like a kind of a sandwich, so it's the right thickness. All right, put that one on top. And we're going to even it up, and we're going to nail it. Okay, so this goes here. Those are called the jack studs because they hold up the head. Now you can put that. Let's test fit everything together. Oh jeez!
Oh jeez!
Where did it shoot out of here?
The air comes out of the top.
Oh,
Yeah, don't put
okay.
it in the top.
Yeah.
Just every foot. One more. Look at you. Like
I mean, I did a whole wood floor. I think I know what I'm doing.
Give me the muscles, guys. Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter. Yeah, that's it. Okay. This is the side that obviously has the roll-up door, so that's a big 5-foot wide opening. We didn't waste a full piece of siding for that, so we just cut this piece for the top. Now this last piece, in order to get it straight, it's going to be even there. And down here we just put a little piece of scrap just as a spacer. Now that the walls are completely built, we turned our attention to the rafters. Now the rafters consist of a miter at the top that makes it sit flat against the ridge. And then another miter at the bottom, but also a 90-degree cut from that forms a rafter tail where I will attach the soffit. And then a bird's mouth, they call it, which is a notch that sits against the top of the wall. And here you can see how the bird's mouth is that notch. It fits in there, and that's what the rafter looks like. And what we've done is we have created the first two rafters. And this is simulating what the ridge is going to be, the whole length of the shed. And this is what I'll call just a ridge support. It's going to come from the wall. Of course, the wall is going to be up here once it's built. But this simulates what we're talking about here. So that's the ridge height off of the top of the wall. And then we've got the two rafters fit right together like that. And that's what we're looking for. Now we've got a pattern and we can just cut the rest of them. Alright, hang on. We gotta go towards the edge. Hold on. I can pull it. We gotta go this way. Yeah, we gotta go down to you. Stop. Okay. Raise it. Wow, Josh, I missed a lot of nails. I got the middle. Yeah. Oh, yeah, look. Look at that. All right, Julie, come and hold it.
Okay, my side's good.
All right. The plywood makes the walls really heavy, so if you don't have any extra help like this, you could always choose to put the plywood on after the fact, and then you could assemble the shed with just 2 people. Bring it upright.
I'm gonna push.
Hang on.
All right, hold on.
It's got to come to the outside though, Pete. It overlaps. Good. Hang on. There we go. There we go. When you pre-build your walls like this, and you do your best to make them square, they should be level and plumb when you put them together. And if they're not, it's just a shed. It really doesn't matter. It's more important that they fit.
Okay.
Is the wire still through?
Yeah. Pete, you're on the...
All right, keep pulling the wire.
Hold on. There it is.
Oh, well done. That's fine.
Push it on, Pete.
Pete, watch yourself.
You got it. There we go. Look at that. Just like we planned it. You got to push that in.
Towards you?
No, as long as they fit in between, I don't care. Okay. That's okay. We're going to push that wall in.
Okay.
Do that now.
Oh,
There you go.
got it?
That's why. No more bullets!
Where's that?
Well, what do you know? No more bullets.
We have a shed.
Yeah, we said.
Alright, that'll do. That'll do!
That'll do, donkey. That'll do.
I'm gonna get a ladder and hold it out there?
Nope, we good.
She'll know.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Why I blew his head up.
You want that?
The backfire blew his camera. Is the camera on for that?
You want that?
That was good.
You want your hat?
Now, when installing the rafters like this, it's best to attach them at the bottom and then attach them at the ridge. And you can see sometimes they sag a little bit. So I had Josh go outside and actually push on the outside wall, and that brings it in a little bit closer to make them fit perfectly. Okay, you can let it go. That's the height of your loft. And so you can walk underneath it.
Yep, nice.
And then we're going to put an 8-footer between the two. Now you don't want it sticking up over the top.
Yeah.
That's the important part. Julie, can you tell us if that's
You look pretty level.
all right? Here you can see I'm installing a galvanized Z-flashing, and what this does is it makes sure that water that hits that top piece of plywood on the gable, it won't absorb into the piece that's below it. It will actually come out on the outside, so it will help the wall last even longer. Hopefully you could see this. There is a little clip that goes between the plywood pieces. Can you reach the next one? Put them right in the middle. Beautiful. Now, unfortunately, they do leave a little bit of space. You can see the sunlight through there, but that's not a big deal. We're going to put tar paper on and shingles, and everything's going to be nice and tight. Then after everything was nailed together, we went back with a reciprocating saw to remove the bottom plate from the doorways. You may think you could save a little money by using shorter lumber on each side of the doorway, but this is the best way to do it. We should have cut the full width of the roll-up door while the wall was on the ground, and it would have been much easier. Instead, I had to mark and cut the opening vertically and get showered with sawdust in the process. After the doorway was the right size, I could remove the bottom plate there as well. But the round blade on the circular saw doesn't cut all the way into the corners, so I had to use the reciprocating saw to finish the job.
Honey, I'm home.
There we go. There you go. All right, let go. Let's see if it stays. It stays! Voila! You're in front of the camera.
That way. Thumbnail.
Yeah, right? Now let's talk about the soffits. I designed the roof to overhang the front and back of the shed by about 8 inches. Although this is mainly for aesthetics, it also keeps water away from the building if you don't want to bother with gutters. We cut the rafters to extend beyond the bird's mouth into a rafter tail. And that gave me a place to nail the fascia boards and attach the soffits. The challenge was we had nothing to attach the back of the soffit near the building. So because we have a table saw, we ripped some of our scrap 2x4s at 14 degrees to make spacer blocks for each rafter. We cut scraps of T111 siding used for our soffits. The only lesson learned is that the seams need to match the sheets on the walls. Otherwise, you'll have a hard time matching the lines from the soffits to the walls. I'm struggling in this clip because the wall started with a half sheet, so the wall seam is here. I started with a full piece on the soffits, so the seams don't line up. Anyway, I wound up having to rip it all down and start over, but in the end you'd never know. Also, as I was editing this video, I realized it would have been a lot easier to nail blocks to the rafters instead of doing all those beveled cuts on the table saw. So if you build a shed like this, don't make my same mistakes. Next came the trim, which was all done using 1x4 pine boards. The fascia boards went up first, and they were nailed to the rafter tails. Now I'll eventually be attaching gutters here, so I nailed them with the framing nailer for strength, and because the nails would be hidden.
Does it need to come to you at all?
The rake boards on the gables were mitered at 14 degrees to match the roof pitch. We used a finish nailer here so the nails would be less visible. The corners are covered with 2 boards, with one of them mitered at 14 degrees to fit against the rake. I initially nailed the boards together at the top and the bottom, and I marked the length.
Okay.
Then I finished nailing them the whole way down, and cut them both at the same time with the miter saw. Then I bring that whole assembly back and attach it with finish nails. All right, we're going to fast forward a little bit, so just ignore the fact that the shed is already painted. But when I put this trim on and the top trim, it creates this bare spot here next to the soffit. And in some of the sides, it's actually big enough for wasps and other critters to get in there. So we want to prevent that. And so what I did is I cut little wedges that are just going to fit right there like that. They'll get painted the trim color and you'll never notice. Now T111 siding is really rough, so I wanted to prime the shed with a spray gun. But let me tell you, spraying makes a mess. So that's why we primed it before installing the roof shingles. What we are installing now is cheap insurance, these things. They are hurricane ties. We don't get a lot of hurricanes here in New Jersey, but we do get some. So they just go on, and what they do is they tie the wall framing to, or I should say they tie the rafters to the wall framing, and then that way, big wind won't pull the roof off.
Don't look down. Keep on moving. Don't look down.
Oi, I hate going downhill.
Shrek, I'm looking down.
Shrek, I'm looking down.
Good.
Because of the insane prices of building materials in the summer of 2021, I was very tempted to use metal roofing on this shed, but I decided to stick with asphalt because it matches the house and I'd done shingling before. I never installed a metal roof, and although it doesn't look very difficult, it would have taken more time to figure it out and order the materials. So I just played it safe and I ordered the asphalt shingles with the rest of the building materials. First the drip edge at the bottom, then the tar paper, then the drip edge up the side covers the edge of the tar paper. Then the starter course of shingles at the bottom, followed by the starter course up the side, and finally the book of 6 shingles goes on before we can start adding the full ones. While Josh and I worked on the roof, Julie, her mom, and Aunt Kathy applied the first coat of paint on the siding using brushes and a thick nap roller. It definitely needed the second coat too. So this drip edge, which goes on the rake board is the one on the gable, I used one piece and I cut it so that it's kind of straight. It's a little bit bent, but that's okay. But it's kind of straight and in line with that that trim. But in any case, that way it bends over the top of the ridge like that. All right, well, if you're gonna ventilate your shed, you might as well use a vented skylight. I think that's pretty cool because it's actually kind of translucent plastic, and it lets not only air in, but it lets light in as well. And you can see how that looks from the inside. It actually has a template right on the back. Why didn't it go through? Now it went through. This shed light product can also be used for retrofit installation. So if you've already got a shed that's existing, you can cut right through the shingles and tuck this up underneath it. It doesn't have to be new construction like this. And they say not to put any sealant around it. They say that these little ridges built into it are enough to channel the water away. That it's just no sealant, no caulk, nothing. This one will go above, and everything should line up very nicely. Good? Yep. Okay, so these are just like the edge shingles. They are perforated, and we just have to snap them into 3 parts. The dark part is the part that gets covered. And you can see they stick up a little bit, but once they heat up in the sun, and it's just September for us right now, so they'll definitely heat up more. All right, that is it. Silicone caulk, real silicone, and put it on these nails that are exposed, and the nails on the skylights that are exposed. And because these are galvanized nails, so they won't, technically they're rust resistant, but they will rust over time. So we want to make sure that they are, you know, protected more. And one little detail that I didn't show is actually these corners where the drip edge at the bottom goes on first, but then the sides come on next. And I just cut these with a bit of I bent it over so that it wraps around a little bit. Just makes it nicer so when you look at it, you don't see, you know, a dark edge where they meet. We'll be installing a loft at each end of this shed. Alright, I put marks already at the height that it's supposed to be. You can see here we're using 2x4 lumber to support the loft. No, right here. See the mark? That mark. You good on that? Got it. Talk about loud, huh? This isn't designed to store a tremendous amount of weight. But if you want it stronger, you can always use 2x6s or even 2x8s. You just have less storage space above. This one's got a mark here, front, and that one I'm going to put in that little joist hanger. For us, if it starts sagging, we can always tie it to the rafters for extra strength.
I don't need this anymore.
The height of the loft is 74 inches, which is tall enough for everyone in our family. That's the same height as the door openings and the tops of the windows. Okay, that's secure there. Switch. The lofts were covered with the same 5/8 inch OSB sheets that we used on the roof. Look at that. That's our door. This is a Janus 650 roll-up door. If you want to get this exact door, just Google it and pick an online retailer. They all seem to drop ship directly from Janus, and shipping is extremely expensive, so consider it buying locally or driving to pick it up if possible. The door itself cost us around $400, but the crate and the shipping added a whopping $275. It's much more economical to build wooden doors, but in my experience, big doors never fit right. And anyway, I always wanted to try a roll-up door to make a mini garage to store the lawn tractor. It really helps to have an impact driver with the right size socket. And there we go. Look at how good this looks.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
That is so cool. Gutter guard is such an easy thing to put on and cheap, and there's really no reason to do a gutter without it, because I know this is the cheapest kind you can get. I got this on my shed 22 years ago and it's still on, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with the cheap stuff. Don't spend a lot of money on gutter guard. Look at that!
First shot.
How nice! Now, are you going to be able to get off and not hit your head?
I think so.
Oh yeah, look at that. No problem.
Yeah.
Baby's got a new home. Like that.
Nice.
That'll prevent anything from damaging the door if it gets too close. The front door was the same piece of T111 siding that was cut from the wall. That way the seams would line up perfectly with the rest of the wall. The trim around the door was all 1x4 pine, just like the rest of the trim on the shed. I'm attaching the trim with a pneumatic crown stapler. The staples are 1/4 inch wide and 1.25 inches long, just short enough that they don't poke through when stapling them from the back through the plywood. Never have too many. You can see how the plywood is bowed, and that's why I used a clamp to hold the wood tight while stapling. We're hoping that the trim will help straighten out the bow over time, but it doesn't affect the operation of the door either way. Not bad for a first test fit, but it's a little tight. It's got to go up, and the sides are a little snug. All right, not bad.
Looks good.
Loading up the lofts from the garage, and I gotta tell you, these things are really pretty cool. We don't have electric run yet, but we can see. Speaking of electric, that was the next step on this project. We needed to trench a line to bring the electric wire from the house all the way out to the shed. We were fortunate to already have a GFCI outlet on the back of the house, which you can see here behind Josh. Because the frame of the window sticks out a little bit from the rest of the siding, I decided that we would attach the window trim to itself and basically make an entire frame, pre-paint them, and the way they're held together is just with pocket holes. And so they can just be nailed right in place. One of the things that concerned me about the roll-up door was down here. The fact that the door is on the inside of the shed. This is the shed floor. And that's not pressure-treated plywood. And even if it was, pressure-treated plywood can still delaminate over time because of the moisture and the rain and all the elements. You can even see how the water has been wicking in here. All right, a piece of flashing, some staples, and a little bit of clear caulk. You might be able to see it right there. This, and I only caulked the top edge, by the way, and that's just in case he pulls the mower in while it's wet. No water will get underneath there. Here we go. We added this rubber garage door kind of strip here. It's actually vinyl. And just to cut down on the rain, and also to close up the space a little bit, and it doesn't interfere with the operation of the door. But if you remember, that trim inside here, I don't know if you could see it, but that trim inside there was set back because it had to stick out even with the siding. So there was a space there. So this not only covers that space, but it cuts down on the amount of rain that hits the door. So we've been working on this very part-time for about 4 months now. And I'm ready to give you a tour. So first and foremost, the door. It's a really pretty design. Josh wanted a cross buck, so we put that in. We gave it a small ramp just so we could get the things in, like the snow blower and some bikes at some point. All right, so the majority of the space is taken up with the big tools. So we've got the lawn tractor here, the zero-turn mower, as well as a snow blower here that is also a monster. But behind that, we've got power washer, we've got the robot for the pool, there's a blower, lawn tools hanging on the wall. We've got some extra lumber here, ladders, things like that, games. The feature of this shed is these two lofts though. This is a really cool feature because it just increases the storage and lets you use up above. And they're both of a height where you can get underneath them. Everybody in the family, nobody's going to hit their head. This one is exactly the same way. And the door openings are the same height as well. Again, no bumping of heads. Now this loft is more of the seasonal kind of stuff. There's some pool stuff up in here, there's some chemicals, chlorine, etc. The spreader's up there, and we also have the bagger for the lawn tractor. Just put it up, get it out of the way. One of the other cool features, let me turn the lights off for a second, and I'm going to close the door. All right, with the door closed, we've just got light coming in from the windows, as well as these skylights. So these are vents, but they're also, because they're translucent, they let light through. And it's really cool. I mean, look, you can see stuff on top of the loft, even if the power was out. And granted, of course, these two windows let in a lot of light too. But in no way is it dark in here. So even if we didn't want to electrify it, we'd have plenty of light. But, of course, we did run power to the shed. We trenched a line all the way from the house. That's this gray wire here. And there's a GFI outlet that was already on the outside of the house that we wired into. And we wired a switch to that outlet, and that controls these two shop lights. And we have a couple of outlets over here on this side, and we figured we're going to let them get used to it. And if they want, they can. We can always expand it and add more. But right now there's 6 outlets in here, so that's fine to, I don't know, get the snow blower started and charge anything that needs to be charged. Now, one of the other awesome features of this shed is this roll-up door. It's just like a garage door. And again, nobody hits their head. And it's also just the perfect place to store that tractor. Now this one we built a bigger ramp, and we also put some flashing here because when the door is closed, you can see that the floor would be exposed to the weather. So we put the flashing there just to make sure that when water hits the door, it comes down over the ramp instead of going into the shed. We also put gutters on the shed and brought the water down over here, which is the low spot in the yard. And we also made sure to put, especially with all these trees here, we put gutter guard on those gutters too. Just inexpensive gutter guard that just keeps the leaves out of it. And it found a nice flat spot in the yard. We didn't really have to do much digging or leveling. And we trimmed out these 2 windows really nicely. Now, a couple other things to note. The studs are 24 inches on center. Everything is 2x4, even the ceiling joists. We did not use trusses, we just used a ridge pole down the middle. These 2 windows are about 36 by, I think they are 21 perhaps, something like that. Honestly, with the shortages that we had this year, these were the windows that I could get. And so I got what I could and I designed around it, and I ordered them long before I started building the shed, so we made sure that we were making the hole sizes the right size. That'll do it for this episode and for this shed. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.
Welcome home.
Be sure to subscribe and watch our new series, The Living Flip. Ooh. And that has 1.25 inches.
It's the little one. That's the